Reed Richards, you will die.
Yes. As I promised, Reed Richards will become your prey. But first, we return to my world to set a little trap
For the rest of my family.
One of the things I love most from Sue's history is when she becomes Malice, and all her dark stuff comes out. I was obsessed with that chapter of her life, so I wanted to make sure that there were tones of malice in there with her, that she wasn't just the stereotype of a goody, sweet mother.
Hey everybody, this is Petey from the Spinner Rack. We also have
Calvin Ellis ready to rock. I'm on the road, people.
they don't know that. They just see a picture. But anyway, this Entertainment Weekly article is just driving people nuts, mainly because of the stuff that the actress Vanessa Kirby and the actor playing Johnny Storm, which is Joseph Quinn, the stuff that they say. I kind of got triggered over the Thing stuff, but hey, you know, that's just me. But you'll see some of the visuals here that are from the EW, and then I'll let some of that play while we listen to actual thing that's going on in the article. So let's here we have the actors all here, and we're gonna play down the recorded voice with the EW article. Ready, set, and here we go.
Welcome to the retro future. Inside the Fantastic Four's first steps into the MCU, the Fantastic Four First Steps.
Now, Cal, as usual, whenever you want to pause, let me know, all right?
Hang on, let me just make certain you can hear me. Okay, as long as you can hear me good. All right, no problem.
Yeah, ready.
Stars Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, Joseph Quinn, and Eben Moss-Bachrach. And director Matt Shakman reveal how this movie is different from what you've seen before. Walking through the extensive sets at Pinewood.
Well, I'm going to stop and say, I'm going to chime in first. I usually don't, but I want to say that changes what they do in Hollywood. We've had 4 total, 3 that actually were released, and as you go along, they want something different. So that's why we keep seeing some these sweeping changes or light changes, but now it's kind of the Marvel Universe style, like the Spider-Man Homecoming. So here we go. So you just have to change. That's what William Goldman said, the writer of many screenplays. Later, ready, set, go.
The film's costume designer, production designer, producers, and director. One word comes up repeatedly: retrofuturism. The aesthetic watchword for this film meant that, in every respect, the creative team wanted to combine 60s period details with sci-fi imagination. To get even more specific, Shakman describes the film's style as where Kirby meets Kubrick.
Now, Cal, you saw the pictures. Do you see any Kirby outside of them having 4 on the outfits?
I'm still trying to wrap my mind around retro-futuristic. Isn't that an oxymoron?
Yes, yeah.
And they're already doing the double talk. They're already doing the double talk. Strike one.
But when I saw that, when I read that, the first thing I thought of was our last video we did on the Fantastic Four, which I hadn't thought of myself. You had said that Kirby had brought it's still futuristic stuff that Reed was creating, and like there's no need to go retro when most of the stuff we still don't have anything next to what Kirby does right now. So I just immediately thought of what you said our last video, where it's talking about Kirby's technology and how futuristic it was and not dated, like not kind of dated. So.
If you go back, you can just go back to that first year of Fantastic Four. And if you look at the things, maybe not so much issue 1 and 2, but definitely like by 4 going over, just look at the stuff, the designs, and what the capabilities were of the things that were being introduced. And remember, this is Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. So the design, the ideas, it's collaboration there, but Kirby is responsible for the looks. This is not stuff that you would have seen like on any street in the 1960s. You can look at the automobiles, you can look at the designs they had for airplanes, all aeronautics, that type of stuff. And Kirby's stuff was vastly different and far ahead of anything that these guys were doing at that time. So, the idea is like, oh, no, we need to kind of tweak this to make it look more futuristic than it would in the 60s. No, you don't, because it was already ahead of its time.
Yeah, it's still, that's why you see so many artists copying it when they do theirs, and it never looks dated. It looks just like the Fantastic Four. And the same thing is that you go to, the technology for today, even space shuttles or whatever you still haven't caught up yet. The budget that Kirby worked on is way over what man can do right now. Only thing you can, obviously copy or top it is stuff you see in movies. So,
one thing was like when you get to the New Gods and you see Orion's that flying harness that he has.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, and again, that's all it is. It's literally just like a harness.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a ship, or anything of that nature, but it's sleek, it's dynamic, it allows him to have perfect mobility, all these other type of things, and it's just a harness. That's what he was bringing to it. So where the other person would have been like, oh, we need this, we need to have this contraption sort of stuff. It's like, no, but this guy right over here, this is all that he needs. These are the things that he was bringing about, and they didn't improve on those things. Orion still has the same harness at the end of the day. It does exactly what it needs to do, and it's still light years ahead because we don't have anything like that today.
Well, that's the other thing. It's like when I see that stuff, I can't wait to see Orion's thing in a movie. I can't wait to see the FF's the fantastic car or Johnny's fantastic car. There's so much stuff that I would love to see, and they're like, let's get this, the Neil Armstrong. Let's get some of the American type of astronaut stuff in there.
Could you imagine the stuff they can do with Orion's flying harness in film?
Yeah.
Where you got these airplanes after him, and he could, because he's literally, just on his harness, he can slip through all of these things. He can have all of this movement, and still have like the offensive capabilities. It's just like when you look at it, it's like, oh wow, it's so simplistic, but at the same time, it's so far ahead, and he's a new guy, so he doesn't really need all this, all this extra stuff at the end of the day. But they always think they know better. They always think they can reinvent the wheel, but they're already off the wrong foot with me when the retro futuristic. I'm like, okay.
Well, so far it's been me 3 times, so this is the first one where I've done the three stops. So I need you to catch up, so it's not me all stopping. Let's keep going.
Original Fantastic Four comics in 2001. A Space Odyssey as the major visual reference points. We knew that we'd be on another Earth, so we had a chance to reinvent what the 60s looked like, Shakman says. I was really interested in imagining the Fantastic Four being astronauts. Instead of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin going to the moon, what if it was Reed, Sue, Johnny, and Ben, who were really the first to go into outer space, the first to push those boundaries? Shakman and his team have done their best to make those ideas.
Okay, what's up?
Did they read Fantastic Four #1? They were astronauts.
Yes.
Do they not understand what an astronaut is?
Yes.
You go into space. You go into space. That makes you an astronaut. So that's #1. And they're like pushing the boundaries. First issue. They were like, look, cosmic storm. We got to get up here. We're going to steal this craft, okay, that we're not supposed to be on, so we can go over here and explore this thing. I think that's pushing the boundaries at the end of the day. Oh, but what if it was them to be the first ones to go to the moon? They don't need to go to the moon. Do you know why? Because they went to the cosmic storm. Neil Armstrong and those guys can go to the moon. It's perfectly fine. You can have both. You can have an Earth where they do this. They don't have to do both. Oh, you know what? We're gonna be the first guys to the moon, and that's how we get to the cosmic storm. It's like, no, you think there's something wrong with the original story, the original origin. That's where all this retro nonsense comes in. Oh, we got to come over here and fix this type of stuff. And I love the way he said it. He didn't say the technology of the 1960s. He said the 1960s, which means they're not going to just try to fix the technology. They're also going to try to fix the social mores of the mores rather of the 1960s. They're going to say something about that. All right. All right. I'll pull
That's coming up later. That's coming up.
Feel tactile and real. Just a short walk from the soundstage where the cast was filming that climactic scene is a workshop containing some of Reed's inventions. The robot HERBIE, Humanoid Experimental Robot B-Type Integrated Electronics, is an animatronic android that can zip around on wheels by remote control, and there are two different models of the Fantasticar. One with a completely built-out interior for the actors to sit in, and one stripped-down version for the more effects-heavy shots. The Fantasticar is a perfect example of this film's retro-futurist gestalt of Mad Men-esque period detail and jet.
Now, I don't like the idea of throwing in Mad Men because that was definitely taking the 60s and showed that every man was basically a jerk, except for the gay ones. And they basically did everything bad, as bad as they could, and treated women totally terrible. Now, it's ad business, which could be close to the stock markets, which could have a lot of that in those type of businesses, but they kind of they pushed it overboard as far as they can go. So this is where you get to the social part when they have to fix it. But they have to remember that, I think it was going to come up later, is that comic books and TV, it pushed us to the future where men and women were equal. Even in the women in the house, they kept them trying as equal as they could. Even going back to the early Superman stories where, like, Clark Kent is the top reporter and Lois is clicking on right on his heels, and then slowly it turned into them being equal to Lois kind of taking over, which played out in the movie. So TV and movies and comic books have already pushed us to the future before we got there. So to look at the 60s and say, hey, we got to do it, and we got to talk about the social standard. Like, there's no point. Movies and TV already made a statement, say we're not touching it. We try to make them as equal as possible. We're making Samantha, even though she's in the house all the time, she's as equal as Darren or whoever husband and wife deal is, and that's a genie. So anyway, let's keep going.
Yeah, there's a reason for that, but I'm gonna wait. I want to hear what else these guys have to say.
Okay.
Invention. Kirby had a generational imagination, but it was rooted in his upbringing in the Jewish slums of New York's Lower East Side, where he was born Jacob Kurtzberg in 1917. Just a little farther from the Fantasticar workshop on the Pinewood lot stands a built-out set replicating Ben's native block of Yancey Street, a fictionalized version of Kirby's own childhood neighborhood, complete with kosher groceries and a synagogue. There are no futuristic inventions here, but the retro recreations are just as important to the atmosphere that First Steps is going for. Jack Kirby wrote this character of Ben Grimm as a bit of an homage to his father, and to the streets that he grew up on, moss-bachrach says. I'm a New Yorker, and I've spent...
You're gonna make me stop it?
Yep, you stop it.
Like, look, I understand this. There was no personalities in any of the characters outside of, say, Superman and Lois Lane and their sort of dynamic early on. Like, at that point, they were mostly men of action. Like, getting into the Thing having a personality and this kind of lower, Brooklyn, Lower East Side thing came later for the Thing too, because he was very direct. He was just angry. He was just like a worrywart, and he was negative. That was his whole character early on, and slowly over time he developed into the Brooklynese, that sort of gruff. He was always gruff, but having that sort of thing, and a lot of that came from Stan, the voice of the Thing. Now Kirby's doing the artwork, and some shots of Reed, he's looking at it, and that's myself. And now they've turned it into, the Thing is like Kirby's father. Now the person that Kirby, at least, or I don't know, I don't know who this came from, I know Kirby said that Orion is like your father. He's kind of a person that is rough around the edges, but he always gets the job done, that sort of thing. But this new thing of, and the fact that we've heard reference of Kirby as far as the tech, now we're referencing Kirby as the writer, like almost a soul writer. And it's just like, I think the actor who plays Ben Grimm, he talks about playing, I cut it out, but he talks about playing Chip in the Punisher movies or Punisher TV shows and says, oh, he had Lieberman, that's after Stan's name. It's like, you couldn't stand out the whole thing, and it's a Marvel production. So when I saw that, I was just like, nobody had a problem with that portion, though. We X'd out Stan as writer altogether. Like,
well, let's continue.
You could have just let me flip out all the time.
A lot of time on Essex Street, on Delancey, on Clinton. So it does feel like home to me, and the production did a beautiful job recreating that. It was so cool to walk down and see the hat cellar and the fish cellar. I was shocked that we were outside of London because it fully felt like the Lower East Side. Johnny is Marvel's archetype of a hothead teenager, but what exactly that means has been open to interpretation over the years. In the 2005 and 2007 Fantastic Four movies, for instance, Chris Evans played the character as a skirt-chasing scallywag. Quinn wanted to do something different. He's a man that leads with a lot of bravado, which can be an affront sometimes. But also he's funny, Quinn says. Myself and Marvel Studios boss, Kevin Feige, were speaking about previous iterations of him and where we are culturally. He was branded as this womanizing devil-may-care guy. But is that sexy these days?
Yeah.
I don't think so. This version of Johnny is less callous with other people's feelings, and hopefully there's a self-awareness about what's driving that attention-seeking behavior.
All right.
Johnny is the...
I'll let you do. I was going to do it earlier. What you got to say?
Now, what are we talking about? No, I'm trying to understand this. So if you're a guy, okay, and you date multiple women, that's wrong today? Johnny Storm is a womanizer? Why is Johnny Storm a womanizer? Because girls liked him? He went on a lot of dates and he didn't settle down with the very first girl? Explain this to me. They have never read these comic books. And it wasn't that Johnny didn't have girlfriends. He did. Johnny Storm did have girlfriends. Johnny Storm got his heart broken.
Yes.
Okay, probably the most famous one of all is when Frankie Ray just flies off. She's like, I'm out of here. Doesn't say goodbye, and he's heartbroken. He got his heart broken by Crystal as well, which might actually be the bigger one than Frankie Ray. But this right over here is like, okay, what you're saying is a guy he can't chase girls anymore. Okay, he can't chase girls. The Johnny Storm that we saw in the Fantastic Four, okay, where the girls liked him, where Johnny's over there like, hey, join me in the hot tub, and the girl's like, hey, show it. No. There was something wrong with that Johnny, even though he didn't do anything wrong. We can't show that. That guy. No, we got to get rid of him. No, that's too much testosterone, too much sex appeal. Nobody wants to see that. Yeah, they want to see that. No, what are you talking about? Yeah.
Well, one thing I was thinking about, which I know, well, that's the thing in comic books, as far as up to what, it's like from the 60s to the 80s is Dory Evans, Crystal, and Frankie Ray, as you said. So it's been basically, he's been like, stand-up guy. And the other thing is having his heart broke showed that, he has his heart. In the relationship, he might be a hothead, but in the relationship, he's a good, upstanding boyfriend. Like, I have no problem, but saying that, I have no problem with Chris Evans. He basically was the life of those other two movies. The scenes
cool.
All work. And the ending of 2, I watch it, it works every time where Ben says, hey, like they're throwing the bouquet, and he's like, what? And then he burns it before it hits the ground. And he says, oh, sorry, reflex. It's like, it's a good scene. The scene in the first one, no, there's so many great scenes. Him, being a jerk, being fun, taking the initiative of stuff, and being mature.
Seeing him like he's some 40-year-old guy chasing high school girls or something. He's a teenager. In the comics, he's a teenager, okay? He's still a kid. What do kids do? They date, okay? Very few of them end up marrying the first person they date or even the third one. You have a boyfriend here, girlfriend here, boyfriend here, girlfriend here. You're working stuff out, and they're calling him a womanizer.
Yep.
Okay? In the Fantastic, well, you get the Strange Tales. You might see a more like revolving cast at the end of the day. But I mean, he's a teenage boy. And not just a teenage boy, he's a popular teenage boy, okay, that's gonna attract the girls, and yet somehow he's wrong. Again, but I've been trying to keep my powder dry because I know they're gonna say it, and then I'm just gonna go crazy when I hear it. But I'm hopefully I'm wrong about what I think where they're going with this. But they keep tiptoeing there, and they're trying to use double speak. They're trying to use double speak when they get around to it as well. But let's see if they do it, because I'm pretty sure they are. I'm waiting for them.
Brother of the Fantastic Four, Quinn notes. But that's not the only quality that defines him. He is really smart, Shakman says. He's on that spaceship for a reason, and I think sometimes people forget that in various comic stories, he's been one of the most heroic of them, even if undercutting his heroism at every turn through humor. He's Sue's brother, which means they are cut from similar cloth.
Now, I think trying to say that, huh?
No, they're not. He was on the ship. He was on the ship because he was Sue's brother. That's the only part he got right. He was on the ship because he was Sue's brother. Sue was there because she's Reed's girlfriend. The only two people who really needed to be there were Reed and Ben. That was it. Everybody else got there because they were related in some fashion or other. This whole
Well, all right, wait.
They're trying to rework this thing, and it's a comic book. It's a fictional story. The origin works. You don't have to do all this stuff. Oh, Johnny's there because he's good with the telemetry of the spacecraft. No, the Johnny Storm I know would have snuck on one way or the other, but like, oh no, I want in on this, and you're not keeping me out. He's like the annoying little brother. If I don't take him, he's just gonna find his way there anyway. He's just gonna sneak into the party anyway. And they keep trying to fix stuff that's not broken because they think they know better. They always think the original stuff is stupid, that somehow this doesn't work. We gotta make these particular fixes, and it was around before you were even a twinkle in your parents' eyes. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're talking about.
Well, one of the things that them trying to point out, like, I mean, they've done it a number of times. They've already done it in, the movies where they have them already be astronauts. So we know they're going to do it, but everyone's already said and done that. So you doing this like it's not something new. And the other thing is that the last X-Men movie that was out, the X-Men, I said it before, the X-Men went into space. We said, all right, Xavier sent the X-Men into space. All kids. They how do we know? We don't even spend any time worrying about them getting into space and where the satellite, that area and the satellites are, that sort of thing. It's like, nope, we're just gonna act like none of that stuff happens. That somehow, Spider-Man wound up in space in the comic books, and these movies where you have people wind up in space in all these other ways where we just like, no, we're not buying into all of the rules that you have to go through to get into space. But at the same time, one of the things that they're also trying to get away from Johnny being a hothead, and this is one of the things that, you have to think about within the group, he is immature because he got them being serious, and he's like, hey, they're handling that portion. And at the time in the thing, he can become that, but he's with that dynamic that brings out that personality. You don't want to just say have everyone go back to the challengers and everyone is just men of action. They all have smarts in some ways. And the thing is, when Johnny's outside of them, he's been in Spider-Man. He was inspiring to Peter Parker. Peter Parker was about to give up being Spider-Man, and he heard him talking to Midtown, and he's like, oh man, I'm going to keep being Spider-Man now, that sort of thing. He's shown maturity outside of the group, obviously in the Strange Tales stories also. So he has that aspect. When he gets in this dynamic with his sister and the thing, it just brings out the silly portion of it. And they've done poignant stories, but the thing is, like, none of that sticks. You can Google.
He doesn't have to. When you're on the Fantastic Four with Reed Richards, you don't have to be the smart guy. You don't have to be the mature guy. Johnny can step back and just say, look, I can just have some fun over here because these guys pretty much got it. And then they're also forgetting the elemental aspect of the characters that was supposed to be reflected in their powers.
Yes.
Where, with Reed Richards, having, the elastic, which is supposed to be that elasticity of mind, Ben being, the gruff guy, so he has the rocky or the scaly exterior. Sue feels invisible to Reed. And then Johnny's the hothead, and then it was reflected in these particular powers that they have as well. And this is one of the reasons I was trying to keep my powder dry, because if not, every 10 seconds I'm going to be stopping this, because it's like this guy never read the book. I mean, you guys out over there, you're listening to us. If you've read the Fantastic Four, even if you've only read the origin story, you've got to know what they're saying is so off. You have to know what they're saying is off. Now, that being said, movie may still be very, very enjoyable, very entertaining. His commentary is strictly about what this person is saying, and he doesn't seem like he ever cracked open a Fantastic Four comic book, let alone a comic book.
All right, so we have about 5 minutes to go.
It's just that Sue, and Reed, for that matter, are big examples for Johnny to live up to. Sue has accomplished just as much as Reed in the political realm. As head of the Future Foundation, a concept taken from writer Jonathan Hickman's 21st Century Fantastic Four comics, one of the successors to...
You didn't hear that he just said Sue accomplished as much as Reed?
I'm trying to keep the powder dry, man.
All right.
I know they're going to do it. I'm trying to keep my powder dry.
Accomplished as much as Reed in the
that is as
realm.
beloved by fans as Lee and Kirby's originals. She has helped achieve global demilitarization and peace. When Shakman and his collaborators say the dreams of the 60s have been made real in this movie, they don't just mean rocket ships. If he is the most scientifically intelligent person, then she is the most emotionally intelligent person on the planet. Shakman.
Okay, I'm stopping again. That's so clumsy. She's the most caring, the most thoughtful. They're trying to make whatever how they worded it, the equivalent of brain.
They don't. This is such a dumb thing to say too, because intelligence is something that we can gauge objectively. You can give somebody a test, okay, and they can score on this whole thing. It's like, oh, okay, they have this type of IQ. We don't have that for emotions. Emotions are subjective. Okay, emotions are subjective, and
not even emotions, thoughtfulness.
Not only that, but 9 times out of 10, your emotions are wrong. That's why we're taught to control them.
Yes.
Okay? Nobody's ever telling you, hey, you got to control your intellect. No, never heard that one. But you do have to control your emotions. Oh, somebody said something. Now, I remember I met this. What is it? I met this. I was doing some function, and I was shaking hands, and I went to shake this woman's hand, and she wouldn't shake my hand. And she was like, oh, no, I'm Muslim, I'm married, and, because of religion, we don't shake hands. So I said, okay, but I still was offended. I totally understood it, but I was still offended nonetheless, because socially, when somebody doesn't shake your hand, it's like, oh, you think you're better than me or something.
There is that,
you think I'm dirt, right? You're too good for me, right? Little too good for me, right? And that's totally not it. But you learn to control that, okay? And put that to the side. Okay, nobody's ever said, hey, man, you need to control how much mathematics you can do within an hour. No, nobody's ever had that at the end of the day. But I am trying. See, I already know what they're going to do. I already know what they're going to do when it comes to this. Hollywood, even back then in the 60s, when you were talking about the television programs, the primary viewers of media were women. Okay, because women were, if they were married, they were at home and they were consuming most of the television. So most of this media was being directed at women at the end of the day. And so you wanted to have stories that, okay, these, women are going to be, entertained by. And then it's been like this for so long. We got to elevate the women. We have to elevate the women. No. Wherever she's at, we've got to elevate her. If she's married, she needs to be right there with her husband. Okay? Because otherwise, we're doing something wrong at the end of the day. Reed Richards is the smartest guy, not on Earth. Reed Richards is the smartest guy in the Marvel universe. In every universe, Reed Richards is the smartest guy. The Council of Reed Richards, okay, is that evidence that Reed Richards is the smartest guy. So Reed Richards can't be the smartest guy in the Marvel universe, unless, of course, Sue is the most emotionally competent person on the planet, which makes no bloody sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. But it's this it's just unreasonable. It's unreasonable. Sue has brought about world peace. She brought about world peace through her thoughtfulness, because they keep going with this. We have to elevate the woman. That's how we're going to be judged. How good are how well is the woman being treated? Well, that's how good. They're like, no. Because trust me, if Sue was the most intelligent person, on the planet in this particular story, Reed would not be the most he would not be the most thoughtful person and have brought about world peace. They would not give a damn about Reed. Yeah. Reed would be left to hang. Yeah. So this I've just had enough with. Reed Richards, smartest guy on the planet. Sue is his wife. Okay, Sue is his wife, and everything unfolds from there. It started back then with, nobody wants her to be a damsel in distress, and they did a lot of development with Sue, but not just Sue, with all the characters. Mm-hmm. With all the characters. There was a lot of development done at the end of the day, but this, come on. Okay, what you're saying is she's not enough unless she is his peer in every single way. So if he gets one, she has to get one, like we're dealing with, kids. With kids, or if one gets an ice cream cone, the other one has to get an ice cream cone too, and it's ridiculous. It's just utterly ridiculous.
Now I have to stop you. It's more 1 for Reed, 1 for Sue. 2 for Reed, 1, 2 for. It's like that. But all right, so let's keep going. Here we go.
As of Reed and Sue. Between the two of them.
Let me just say that we haven't got to what people have issue with Sue yet, but with the actress Vanessa Kirby. But for Joseph Quinn, they got upset about Johnny not being a hothead. That's what they were like. What are they talking about?
She probably said some stupid feminist concept, comment, but we'll see.
Here we go.
Building an idealistic society. But as cool as it is to see these inventions and imagine global peace, a movie about a perfect society would be boring to watch.
Yeah.
So, throughout First Steps, a great shadow will fall across this utopia.
Ooh.
Remember that all is lost moment? If Reed, Sue, Johnny, and Ben have solved every problem on their Earth, then only something bigger than their planet could scare them that much.
I wonder what that
Achieving
is.
global political peace sounds only slightly harder than synthesizing the decades-long fictional history of Sue Storm. As Marvel's first female superhero, she'd been part of the Fantastic Four since its first issue. But back then, she carried the relatively demeaning codename of Invisible Girl.
Now that's where I take offense.
Yes, how is that demeaning?
That is so ridiculous.
How is that demeaning?
There was never any of those people. Oh, I'm not a girl. Like any of that nonsense. Good Lord,
what is that? What were the girls saying like a year or two ago? They were throwing the phrase around. I'm just a girl.
Yeah.
They were like, you know what? I'm just a girl. They were throwing that around. So I guess it's cool when you want, and it's cool when you're not. Like, no, the word "girl" in and of itself is not demeaning, okay? It's used plethora of different ways. It's not demeaning, okay? And you're going to have to really, that's the whole thing. This is so much,
Yeah.
I'm reluctant to use that term because I don't like to give it a lot of air, but this is so thoughtless and brainless in terms of how they're structuring it. Why is this demeaning? Why is this demeaning? It's 1961. The character's name is the Invisible Girl. So if she had been named the Invisible Woman, that would be okay, or you would find something about that. And what's the meaning? Is it that she's the Invisible Girl, okay, or just the word girl? Like, come on, come on. It's just ridiculous. You have a character, Supergirl. For some reason, that was all right. It wasn't demeaning for her, even though she was around she's been around forever. and well, you got the trademark thing going on, but still referred to as Supergirl. You have all the other superheroines who are also referred to as girl. That's a problem. Okay, but the boys, no, that'll be just fine. Those won't be demeaning. No, they can't. What is it? This is how these things end up getting labeled, because of this type of talk. Dude, keep your politics out of it. Keep the whole. All right. I'm done. I'm done for right now. I'm done.
Well, the next one. Well, because I've had to call this. Here we go.
Could only turn herself invisible and mostly functioned as a damsel in distress.
All right. This is the thing.
What issue? What issue did that happen? What issue?
No, this is the thing. All right. So this is.
And their powers all expanded within the first year. What is he talking about?
Wait. Okay. So this is the thing. Go to FF5, right? Well, we have Sue captured on the side while the FF are dying. So the story is they capture Sue, right? And what Stan was doing was taking every cliche and flipping it. So he sends the three of the FF out to get this treasure. They get the treasure. Doom gets the treasure. And next thing you know, he says, nope, I'm killing you. I'm taking your air out. So then Sue has to save them. So get out of here, which you're talking about this. They did, and the whole idea was they came with the Invisible Girl. The idea of Stan wanted to play up the fact that she was invisible most of the time, that she was stuck the same way the thing was. But she was just that. Once the readers started complaining and saying, they were saying terrible things about her, they thought the fans would like it. So that's how they're like, no, their plan was that she was a good teammate. And then when the fans were kind of went in a negative slant, they added something to it. But they didn't go into it saying, let's make her the lamest thing. They're like, oh, okay, so let's give her something else that she can do that's connected to her powers. And then that worked out. But it wasn't like we're creating the lamest thing. No, she was very functional in all of those stories, and she's the catalyst for it and that sort of thing. So let's not turn it into this thing, because Stan was taking every cliche and turning it on its heels. Every one of them. Every one, the stories that you've seen, and it was close. You could see in some of the Superman stories, some of those worked their way into these Marvel things, but they were all flipped. Some of them had almost the same story beats, but it's just like I always go to like Metallo and Iron Man. They got almost some of the same story beats. The only thing that Metallo's a villain, and Iron Man is a hero. And there's no point where Tony Stark is a villain. He gets attacked. He has his heart replaced. The other guy was in a car accident. He gets his heart replaced with a uranium, and then he's powered and does this stuff. But anyway, there's not true.
It's so diaphanous and plastic in terms of this guy's approach, because it's only because Sue's a girl. That's it.
Yes.
Okay? Ben Grimm's powers have been consistent from day one. His look has changed, but who is he? He's pretty much the strong man of the group. He hasn't gained anything else for the most part. No problem there. No problem there, right? Nobody's coming out. We're not getting anything from the ACLU saying, hey, he's the only Jew on the team. He should have better powers. No. No.
Well, this is the other thing. Sorry, keep going.
The two people with the coolest powers on the team, Reed Richards, Johnny Storm. Okay, of all of them, Johnny Storm. Okay, everybody loves the Human Torch. That was a great visual. He can fly, the flames, everything of that type of nature. But all of their powers, in terms of their characters, grew over the years. The thing would get stronger. His appearance changed. Sue would have the force field, be able to manipulate other things in terms of her invisible force field. Johnny would get Nova Flame, and Reed just became the smartest guy, the smartest guy ever, and we would see that application with his powers. So you saw that evolution as it would go over. But when you say something like this, and an issue, like you just said, in issue number 5, the team gets rescued by the supposed damsel in distress. You haven't read this. You haven't read this, and they keep making the past a stereotype that fits with their particular worldview. No, that wasn't the.
And that's the other thing. The other movies have already done this. They've already turned. It's not like this is the first time. They're acting like they just got these characters and they haven't even watched the other movies, even though portions of the plot is from the movie that was originally planned for the Fantastic Four 3. So a portion of that is there, but they keep acting like, because they know we're all idiots, right? Most of us are not in the know, and they're just like, hey, you don't know that we've updated these characters because they're from the 60s and we saved them. And it's like, well, everybody did. Everyone's updated them somewhat where in the origin, they're all, they're all explorers or they're all astronauts. It's all set up in these movies. It was done by, what was it, Jim Lee first. I think James Robinson did his own thing where they were all the same age when Stan and Jack did not plan for them all to be the same age. That sort of thing, except for Johnny being the youngest, having Reed, Sue, and Ben all be the same age, where Stan and Jack, possibly had Sue around 18 or 19. So, anyway, it's just that was a rough one to hear. But we got more. We haven't even got to what people have had issue with. So we've hit on so many other things, and the only one that they talked about so far is the hothead, which they had issue with.
If you played an exact 60s Sue today, everyone would think she was a bit of a doormat,
oh,
Vanessa
God.
Kirby says. So figuring out how to capture the essence of what she represented to each generation, where the gender politics were different, and embody that today, was one of the greatest joys of this.
Gender politics.
Over the years, Sue evolved in several ways. Her abilities expanded from individual invisibility to control over electromagnetic light and force fields, making her arguably the team's most powerful member. At various times, she's become a mother, a leader, and a skimpily clad dominatrix named Malice, synthesizing all these aspects into a...
I don't know how Malice comes into this. This is the first movie. How do you get Malice into this story?
Because Malice was scant clad.
There's gonna be more. There will be more Malice talk in this thing. But yeah, what are you saying?
No, that's all. I mean, if the 60s were such a turbulent and problematic era in terms of gender politics, why did you set the movie in the 60s?
This is why when I argue with people and they say that it should be set in the 60s, for Reed to say go get in the kitchen, that sort of thing, and like you're only good in the kitchen, and then she proves us wrong every time. I'm sorry, Sue. I knew you were like, well, no, like it just, I don't know. That's why you don't want to have to say any of this stuff. Just put it in the present day, and you don't have any of that stuff. But they're like, no, it has to be. But now we have to address how she's progressive in this thing where she sees a woman and the husband is like kicking her in the shins and then like saying, no, you can't do this. Teach the audience moment. Don't do this to your wife.
No, what 60s show was that? In the 60s show, the woman was always smarter than the husband. You remember those? What was that episode they would always do where they had to switch places? And so the woman would go to work and the guy would stay home, and the guy couldn't do laundry and he couldn't cook, he couldn't make a sandwich. And before you knew it, the house looked like it was about to burn down. And the woman would have like a little difficulty at work, but this guy was just like totally out of his depth and doing some of the basic household chores, couldn't iron, couldn't sweep. That's a 60s TV show. Are we going to see that?
Well, what was it? I think, well, that's the other thing. She's going to have her wagging the finger at men doing that, saying, you girls, women and girls can do it. No, you women, I can't use girls because even girls are negative to young girls. You women I've caused world peace. No man has ever done that. Yeah, go on, girl. And the men say, shut up. No, I'm sorry.
Character was a lot of fun for Kirby, who says motherhood, in particular, became the key through line. Indeed, Sue's pregnancy will play a significant part in the plot of First Steps. Matt and I were really aware that there hasn't really been a mother with a baby in these superhero archetypes women have been getting.
All right. Do you understand that
She's pregnant?
Huh?
She's pregnant in this movie?
She's pregnant in this movie.
How old is this chick?
Oh, man. I think she's in her 30s, something like that.
She doesn't look like she's in her 30s.
You think she's in her 20s?
No, she definitely doesn't look like she's in her 20s. I thought
she's not. She's definitely not. When she was in the movie with Jason Statham as his sister, there was a considerable age difference, almost like 20 years. So
I guess the better question is, how old is she playing in the movie?
yeah, that's a good question. But she, let's see, man, you're saying you going to do it. Not what I expected you to say. She's
No.
way older, but that's only because I do think about the.
Okay, in actual life, she's 36. I'm hoping that she's playing that or younger in the movie.
Mhm.
At the end, she's pregnant now.
Well, this is the other thing is that you
Sue
have
was
to.
half
Well,
age. Sue was like half her age and pregnant.
yeah. So yeah, that's the thing. Well, that's the other thing. You can't. You're asking now. Stan and Jack were from the old school, but superheroes don't go through pregnancy. They do a story where here's the son. Oh, you have Tarzan, a movie, and they had Boy. They don't get into where Boy came from in the movies. I don't know the whole Tarzan lore to say if there was a boy, but they had son of Tarzan, those stories. But in the movie, they somehow turned it into what's the name? They turned it into Boy. So we go to this. Stan and Jack did something revolutionary, but they were also from the old school. So, and at the same time, it was the 60s. So just like Lucy, you're not going to do something where you do a revolutionary idea. They had her go through the pregnancy. They had her leave the group for a while. She was there, I think, I don't know how many issues, maybe one arc, a 4-story arc with the Mad Thinker before she leaves the group and she saves the thing during that period. But these are guys from the old school. Like they're in there, like the Kirby might have been 50 at that time, and Stan was like in his mid 40s. So they're like, you know what? The pregnancy and the kid, they were revolutionary for the time, but at the same time they were kind of like, what are we doing? Like we're taking her out of the group. And then when they did finally said Crystal's a replacement, they sidelined Crystal the next issue. They're like, well, no, we're not replacing Sue. Like the fans like Crystal a lot more. Our plan is not to get rid of Sue. So Crystal's like, I had to go back to the Interland. I got to go back to the Hidden Land. I got to go back to the Hidden Humans. And then she stays with the group, but she's kind of not as dynamic as I think it's issue 81. Like she's like uses all her powers, messes up the wizard. And they're like, it's like, wow, she's, they looked at it and probably said, I think we eclipsed Sue. So by the time when they're in Latveria, Sue comes back and saves them because they don't have any power. She uses her invisible force field to save them. The thing says, we should have never done this without her. So Stan and Jack were really like, this was to say, to be in, I don't mean this in a subtle way. This was their girl. And they were like, they did have a pregnancy. It was revolutionary, but then they're like, we need her back. And then from that point, they showed they're building up how protective as she was of the team, and they had the mother bone, but they really struggled with the idea of her having a kid. And then later on, it's not till like the late 70s, like Franklin shows up from time to time for like kind of a either MacGuffin or kind of a easy way out of the plot, but not too many stories like that. But that's how he shows up. But then I think it's not till the late 70s where he becomes a regular with the family. He's with the family. He's like 4 or 5 years old, and then I think when Byrne does a second pregnancy, she's a little more active. But at the same time, it was the 80s, so like I'm saying, time my stepmother was pregnant, and I could see her going to work. She up until I think in probably the last 3 months of her pregnancy or something like that. I couldn't tell you because I can't remember the exact dates, but it's like it was played the same way the people, someone in the 80s with their pregnancy outfits, that sort of thing, and then the maternity period. So like this thing of deciding to do that, to say that I only bring all that up to say adding something new. No, Stan and Jack did it. Byrne did a second pregnancy and that sort of thing. And the redo of this other pregnancy was just kind of just quickly plot thing. It was only like an issue where she was pregnant, so they didn't really they did a comic book pregnancy with the bringing back the baby and Valeria and all that stuff. But I don't act like you're the first. Stan and Jack, even though they had Son of Turek, they had the Super Sons and that sort of thing. Stan and Jack did the 9, they did it 12 months, but they did a pregnancy period where she was pregnant for that time. She had some complications and that, and then Byrne did another pregnancy, which was the actual pregnancy, as well as you can do. So don't try to act like y'all did it first, because y'all did not do it. It comes directly from the Fantastic Four, from the people you're talking about that you got to fix everything and add all this stuff. And Stan and Jack did it already. So anyway, 2 minutes left.
This much
huh?
No, this want to say regarding the whole thing with the pregnancy. Okay, if because they're taking this, there's a big difference between being pregnant and going to work because you want to and going to work because you have to. And the dynamic today,
well,
have a lot of single parent homes. You gotta go. You gotta go. If the shoe's on the like, hey, and I have the option and I don't, I'm pretty certain what the option would be. So, that's one. But then two, I'm like, how long have they been together? I'm just like, but once you, and this is not me, this is just medically. After you hit a certain age, it's a geriatric pregnancy.
Okay. Now you're going too far into the story, into the real life that she's 36 and pregnant.
No, Vanessa Kirby can be 36. Vanessa Kirby can be whatever age. What age is Sue Storm? Is the
That's
question?
A good question.
Is the question that I would ask, because again, this is trying to really throw a whole bunch of modern stuff back in the 60s. And in the 60s, women would have had children a lot younger. They would have had children a lot younger, and they would have had more children. That's part of it too. But I guess they fixed that. They fixed that too, along with world peace. So we got that whole thing going in this particular universe too. But good. I'm looking like with everything that she's doing. When did she find the time to get pregnant?
This is the other thing, is that I didn't know that Johnny is 31.
Well, that's not a hothead anymore.
Well, the thing about that's a good point that you're bringing up, and it's different from I think in the Fantastic Four there were definite obstacles which led to the FF not Sue not being able to having to take action during those periods during the second period when she took action. With when Reed was taken away, he was taken away from, after she finds out Reed was taken off Earth, and she has to put together the pieces to figure out where he's at, and to find out he's been captured by the Shire. And then and then the Submariner slips in there and says you got to help out, and she goes helps him out there. And then I think that's the two stories that she did during those periods. And then the FF with Kirby, there's only that one story where they already announced that she was pregnant in the annual, and then the story where Ben goes bad again. She's there, but they have a very dramatic Reed carrying off saying we can't do this. But I say all that to say, you bring up an interesting point that Vanessa Kirby has already saved the world. I don't know how they play this out. Obviously, she'd come back in there to save the world at this period, but ultimately, she doesn't have to do anything because they're at the pinnacle. They obviously caused the world to be as rich as it is and the world peace, so she can basically do the best. And I guess it's hard to tell. Is she going up into space pregnant? I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
Cosmic rays. And the other thing is, like, if you're going by the 60s, a couple like this at this point, this would be a couple people would just assume, oh, you don't want to have children, because they would have been there already. So, it's a schizophrenic approach where, hey, we're gonna set the film here, but for some reason the people are really gonna act like it's 2025, and from a particular worldview that aligns with what we think people want to see in 2025 in a 1960s world.
Yeah, and it's interesting to be. Do they? Obviously, I don't know. I guess there's some time lag, but doesn't look like there's any difference in the look of them going up into space and them, being in this utopia and their that sort of thing. So that's the weird question: is she pregnant before they go up into space, or is there a 5-year lag and then they saved the world and did all this stuff, or maybe they already saved the world, went up into space. 5 years later, we're at the present day, and then Galactus comes and steps on their future. All right, let's get back to it.
One of the things I love most from Sue's history is when she becomes Malice and all her dark stuff comes out.
I don't have a problem with Malice, but why for this movie?
Taxi?
Give me that container, or you will meet your ultimate defeat at the hands of Malice, Mistress of Hate.
So I wanted to make sure that there were tones of malice in there with her, that she wasn't just the stereotype of a goody, sweet mother. Kirby continues, I've always been really interested in the mess of femininity, and how can you be both? How can you be all the things? Not just the tough, invincible, powerful woman, but also a mother who gives birth, which is itself a superhero act. I love that these characters are real humans in a messy family who argue and try to work it out and get things wrong. Although Marvel is reluctant to confirm the identity of Sue's First Steps child, the comics canon provides 2 possibilities. A son named Franklin Richards and a daughter named Valeria Richards. Franklin's mutant abilities are beyond even the most powerful X-Men, while Valeria has an intelligence that could even surpass her father's. As a result, the cosmic beings of the Marvel Universe make a point of keeping tabs on both of them. Franklin, in particular, has long been a subject of fascination for Galactus, the devourer of worlds, who does indeed come calling in first steps. I didn't want to just use motion capture for Galactus. I wanted to actually have someone there embodying the part, Shakman says. So we've built an entire costume for him, and we've done a lot of photography testing to figure out, how do you make sure that the scale is correct? How do you film Mount Rushmore? Positioning Galactus as the antagonist also distinguishes First Steps, since previous Fantastic Four movies all started with Dr. Doom. It's an understandable impulse, since Doom is perhaps the most iconic supervillain of all time. But Marvel's upcoming plans for Robert Downey Jr. as the character freed Shakman to try something else. Doom's a great character, but he takes up a lot of air, the director says. Other film adaptations have done both an origin story and Doom. We're doing neither, and that allows us to look at them from a fresh perspective.
So,
how do you look at Dr. Doom with a fresh perspective if he's not in the movie?
The fresh perspective means that, hey, we want Doom for our Avengers movie. Y'all can take Galactus.
Sounds right.
So you get an end credit scene that might not be real by the time we get the movie out, but that's as far as you get from Doom. And I don't know. It's the harder part. Thing is, are they gonna try to add some weird, that's these callbacks to things that they shouldn't call back to, like in Batman Forever. It's a holy rusted metal. So what was that? No, it's holy rusted metal. And they're gonna have a sex scene where she's got the Malice costume, and they're gonna probably get the Malice costume right. Now, that's to say, I'm saying I don't have any problem with the Malice story. I have a problem with throwing Malice into this story. Malice is not Sue. Malice is the Psycho Man taking Sue's mind and flipping it, using his thing of changing people's mind, and that infuriates Sue so much that she feels like she's been violated. It's not a good portion. It's not a part of Sue's personality. That's why he was able to flip her out of it, because it was totally put on her. It was totally put on by the Psycho Man. It's nothing.
Well, not this Sue. This Sue isn't the stereotypical sweet, nurturing mother, which that in of itself is a stereotype. What person wouldn't want a sweet, nurturing mother? No, she's got to have that edge to her, so we can see, how she might actually become Malice. Like, huh?
I was like, what edge? What, like, I don't understand what this person is saying. And I don't know, maybe he's talking from personal experience. Maybe his mother had that edge. And he's like, yeah, I can see malice. But aside of that, like, it's just like you said, when Sue is not malice. Sue was made into malice. That's not her personality. She was being mentally manipulated. Personality is being warped, and like you said, that's how she was able to come out of it, because that's not her. This guy, I don't know. I really don't know what he must have read the alternative Fantastic Four comic books, that weren't made available to us as kids. This must be like, the new Fantastic Four comics along with the new math, because I don't know what he's talking about. I read these books just like you did. I have no idea what this guy is talking about. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's a thing. I don't know, but those are the thing that a lot of people definitely flipped out, where they keyed on the gender politics, from Vanessa Kirby saying that, and Joseph Quinn saying Johnny not being a hot hit. They're not going that route. There was obviously 3 million other things that we had issue with, but that is and that was trimming it. I did trim it out of some of the stuff that I felt wasn't necessary. So you guys, you'll have a connection, so you can look at the link and read it yourselves. But I wanted the audience, to hear the whole thing. Obviously, I wanted Cal to interact, else we wouldn't have done this. But yeah, it's a tough thing, because they are obviously favorites of ours, and it feels like they're working from a handicap. Like they're like, these are all the things we had to fix, rather than say, wouldn't it be fun to run onto a rocket ship and steal it? Like, this is what we see this happening in all these other stories. It's like, no, it can't happen on Earth. None of this stuff can happen on. Why not? Because it's not realistic. It's not. Just have fun.
They're presupposing the reaction of the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of entertaining the audience, they're presupposing a reaction from the audience. So we have to have these things in here. The woman has to be elevated. Oh, they can't nobody can just get on a spaceship or anything. I'm like, hey, wait a second. We saw Guardians of the Galaxy where a guy was on an alien planet and he's dancing to music. He's not taking the whole thing too seriously. It's not real. It's fiction. I still remember Guardians of the Galaxy, that opening sequence. And I remember being there in the theater, and I said, if they get through this portion with Peter Quill dancing to this music, and he's over here kicking these alien things around, and the audience, rocks with it, I said, they got a hit on their hands. Because that means everybody's being entertained. They're like, all right, we're buying into this world. And they seem not to understand that people realize it's not real. It's not real. So they're already there willing to suspend disbelief, or else they wouldn't have plunked down the $10, $15 to come into number one. And then a lot of the issues that they think that the audience is going to have with this portrayal or that portrayal of female characters rarely comes into play, unless it is so glaring and extreme. Okay. Or even worse, everybody liked it until somebody wrote a commentary, and then all of a sudden it became terrible.
Yeah.
Just how about playing, hey, let Reed be played as a person with this particular personality, these likes and these dislikes. Okay. These particular strong points and these particular failings, and let every character be, following the same suit. And I think the audience will have no problem with it. But they keep, particularly, I can't say particularly, with the female characters, they keep going that this character needs to be just as much of a man as the men, and yet somehow, she's going to be a woman at the same point. And I look at this and I'm like, I don't see this at all. I cannot see a woman who is doing everything that Sue is doing, and then at some point she's having kids. I'm like, the historically, the couples like that and the women like that, they don't have children. Okay, their career becomes the child, or their job, their business, their avocation advocation, that becomes a child. They don't do this type of stuff. So now when I'm hearing I'm like, she's pregnant? And then the other problem is I'm also looking at it because of uh, Sue in the original story is a lot younger.
Yes.
Is a lot younger. She has her first child. Even as a member of the Fantastic Four, she has a child a lot younger. And so I'm like, okay, so she's older. She's doing all this stuff at the end of the day, and somehow a baby sneaks in. So, and then I'm like, I'm not even thinking about what you said. Well, like, did she get on the space? Is she up in space with the cosmic storm while she's pregnant? I'm like, wow, she really doesn't care.
Well, that's
really, like this. Don't worry, the shielding will hold. This baby will be just fine.
well, that's the thing of saying that and us not having the timeline from it, and then the fact that Stan and Jack had decided, even with mutants running around, for the Fantastic Four, for Reed and Sue, there might be some complications through the pregnancy, which obviously they were doing for a good story, interesting yarn type of deal. And but it's like some of the things that people go through and some of the worries and that sort of thing, which they played out in a cosmic way. So it's like, but doing this thing where we're throwing in, we're just announcing that we waving over here, she's pregnant, and nobody's ever done this before. It's like, you understand, the Fantastic Four did like everything first, and then when we get to the Wasp, when we get to Janet Van Dyne, we don't spend all these interviews having Michelle Pfeiffer, explaining how great she is and how much how they updated the Wasp. So any of that stuff is not necessary. Just say these characters are good characters and move on. But
yeah, that's what they used to say. These are such timeless characters. We can use them in any age. They don't say that anymore.
Yeah.
Now it's somehow that everybody's done some research on the 1960s and how horrible of a period that time was. But don't worry, we're not doing that. We're not doing that at all. We're going to invent the 1960s in an alternate universe that is perfect in every way and matches up with the ideology that we have today that we feel is acceptable. Because those guys didn't know what the hell they were doing.
So I'd like to thank you all for watching the show, and thank you guys for all the.
What was the comment? What did Vanessa Kirby say?
Well, the gender politics is what people flipped out on.
What did she say?
She just said interesting of playing to the gender politics of the time, and people, it was in there, but the people just listened to it and they just kind of took it as gender politics, meaning that she's going to be saying, "My baby Franklin." Oh, we're letting Franklin give him his own name. Or they said the thing saying, "I'm gay." This one girl, she just was losing it over the whole thing. And she was like, "Oh, the gender politics was this, that, and the other." And the torch she even had with that. And she was, mad that Ben didn't have his
thing is gay.
the meat and potatoes voice. So, but her saying gender politics, just like, way people look at it's triggering. So people hearing that, they're just like, what she do? She's saying that she identifies they, them. Like that's what people, which you say gender politics, that's the idea of it, is that the person decides, will they allow Franklin to decide what the baby is? That's what they kind of, when you say that type of term, but it's like she's just trying to be talking about the time of the 60s, but in saying that, it's like, well, what are you going to do? How are you going to reference that? So people obviously were worried. So,
well, that would be great if it was like, the thing comes out, I'm Jewish and gay.
Okay. We're just going to add a little garlic now. All right. I'm glad you got that one. I know it was a little out there. All right, so thank you guys for watching. Huh?
It's just so stupid.
All right, spin a rack.
Hold on. Hang on.
Okay.
You ever told like a little kid a story?
What?
Yeah, no. Have you ever told a little kid a bedtime story or something like that? Has the kid ever stopped you and said, "Wait a minute, I'm not too sure about the accuracy of your stuff"?
Well, that no. The thing is, that's the thing. Like some things, the ones they like the most is the ones they come back to you in a teenager and they're cynical and they say, "Hey, why would you say such and such like this?" It's like you didn't care. It's just a
No,
dumb story.
I love, I've done that. I've done that for little kids. I mean, literally groups of kids. I've done the whole story thing, and kids never said that because they were being entertained. Okay, they were being entertained at the young time. The only time a kid would ask me something, and it never happened, but the only time a kid would have asked me something is if they were not being entertained. That's when they start paying attention to all these extraneous details. Like, well, wait a minute, what about this? Oh, wait a second. If both of them are fighting, who's taking care of the baby? They never cared about that so long as they were being entertained. So it strikes me as so odd and stupid that these guys are making these ham-fisted decisions, okay, about literally acceptance from the audience instead of entertaining the audience. That right over there, I just don't. And they're making so much money. These are supposedly professionals, and yet job one, rule number one: entertain your viewers, entertain your audience, entertain your readers. That's the first rule. That is the first rule at the end of the day, and that seems to go out of the window to make certain that they can check these boxes based on this ideology, worldview, politics, whatever it may be. Just dumb.
Yeah, no, it's well, that's it's to say all this stuff is almost like they're just adding this fog on the project, and they don't need to hear that stuff. They don't need to hear how different all these characters are. What they need is just have a good movie for Marvel, and people buzzing about the Thunderbolts. Well, hopefully it is successful because if then they'll have possibly two successful movies. But with the way they're talking, it just seems like they don't know what they're doing, and the wrong people got lined up to do these jobs. But Vanessa Kirby wants to get into that outfit. Well, let's see if you can get into the Malice outfit. I'm obviously she probably could, but it's just like, how does it? What does this work in the '60s too? Come on. But nobody commented on that though. No one commented on the Malice. That's somehow
No, because they want to see her in that outfit. That's why.
Good Lord. All right. So as more as we find out, the more we'll talk about. But with so much people complaining and having issue and saying basically it's over, that it's a bomb already. We had to say
No, I'm not going to say that. I don't like what I'm hearing here. It sounds so tone deaf, but the movie might still be very, very enjoyable. I'm still looking forward to this movie. I still want to see it, and I'm very hopeful that I'll be entertained. But if I got to base it on what I'm hearing here, hopefully this is just a whole bunch of that double talk that they do before the film comes out. And I don't know who this is for because it's for a population that doesn't even come out to see these films. So I don't know why they're talking like this, but I'm still very hopeful that it's a good film.
Yeah, and those people you're talking about, they're hoping for it not to be another bad Marvel. They're not even fans of the book thing, and they say, well, hopefully this one is good. And then when they find something that they hear, oh, I knew it wasn't good. Listen to that name. That name is terrible. They should have gone with the Future Found. No, goddamn it, no Future. All right, we're closing this one out. Spin the rack.
We're out.
We are out. If I can get to